Part 2 starts with Dr. Jonathan Guagenti, a researcher in Outpost 3, plays with a green beetle. The beetle leads him outside the room, where Jonathan sees wildlife. Before he can take a look at the flowers, a Carnotaurus arrives at the scene and opens his jaws, devouring Jonathan. In the next scene, Elizabeth, Taylor, and one of his soldiers Brady leave in a rover to investigate what's going on at Outpost 3 since no one there is responding to communications attempts. They arrive at the outpost and see the gate is open when it shouldn't be, and Taylor notices chewed cables. He deduces that ovisaurs, a species of dinosaurs, probably did that to the cables. Inside the research lab, they see signs saying do not go outside, and this is not a dream. They hear noises and go into a room to find two people lying down on beds while a woman arrives at the door in front of them. The woman states that the last thing she remembers is running around in snow up to her knees and then being in the lab. She doesn't seem to know that she's in Terra Nova. Elizabeth and Taylor then discover a video in the main lab where Dr. Jonathan is talking about the early stages of memory loss. Elizabeth finds some research papers and finds out that Dr. Jonathan was working on genetic memory manipulation to cure diseases like Alzheimer's and created a virus to disperse it. Since they could have also been exposed to the virus, Taylor wants them to stay quarantined until they can figure out a solution. Back at home, Zoe comes in sick from school, while Maddie is having her first date with Mark. At the outpost, Taylor finds Dr. Jonathan almost entirely eaten by the Carnotaurus. Elizabeth briefs the situation to Jim in a video. Jim mentions that Zoe is sick, and she realizes Jim also has a cold. For the next couple of days, Jim cannot communicate with Elizabeth due to a communication problem in the outpost. Anxious, he goes to the commander's base and asks Lieutenant Alicia about it. He learns that the place is under quarantine and she too hasn't been able to contact Taylor. Learning this, Jim wants to go check out himself, but the lieutenant informs him to stay, but he leaves anyway. Jim informs the situation to Malcolm, but he decides that they are going together to save Elizabeth. Meanwhile, Josh and Sky share a kiss, but Josh immediately pulls away, saying that although he likes her, he still thinks about his girlfriend Kara, who is in 2149. Seeing him upset, Sky tells him she could help him get Kara to Terra Nova. In the following scene, Malcolm and Jim arrive at Outpost 3, where they find that ovisaurs have been chewing the communication wires again. Once inside, they find Elizabeth, but she is pointing a rifle at them. Scared, Jim takes off his helmet to show who he is, but she still forces him down. When Malcolm takes off his helmet, she starts crying out of happiness. She hugs him, confusing Jim. After conversing for a while, Malcolm realizes that Elizabeth's lost 20 years of her memory and thinks she's in medical school again and just started dating Malcolm. He tells Jim that she'll start losing more of her memory and might eventually die. At home again, Sky takes Josh to Tom Boylan, a bartender. Boylan says he can get people to Terra Nova, as he's done in the past, but needs an expensive trade. At the outpost, Jim finds a video of Elizabeth talking about what's going on to her, being in Outpost 3 in case she too loses memory, and shows it to Elizabeth. She finally understands the situation. When Jim hears a noise, he follows it and finds an unconscious Brady. Just then, Taylor jumps from the roof above and threatens to shoot Jim. It turns out that Taylor has also lost his memory and thinks he is in the war in Somalia. He threatens to slit every throat in sight if he can't find his wife and son before knocking out Jim. Meanwhile, Elizabeth and Malcolm examine blood samples, and Malcolm also starts showing symptoms of memory loss. Jim arrives at the scene and informs them that Taylor's going back to the colony because he thinks he's in a war from his past. Malcolm and Jim then carry an unconscious Brady to the truck when Malcolm goes through another amnesia phase. He doesn't understand anything at all. Jim gets annoyed by it and punches Malcolm, knocking him out. In the meantime, Taylor arrives at the Terra Nova gates and punches a guard to get to the commander's base. While examining, Elizabeth notices that Jim hasn't had any symptoms lately, as he too should have been infected by now. When Jim sneezes, she realizes that his cold symptoms are blocking the virus from entering his body. Back at the colony, Maddie worries about her parents, and together with Mark, she marches to the base to speak to Lieutenant Alicia. Unknown to them, Taylor has already infiltrated the base and grabs Mark from behind, putting a knife to his throat. Lieutenant Alicia tells Taylor he's sick and there is no war anymore. She convinces him she and Mark are his soldiers and that Terra Nova is home. Taylor then slowly moves away from the knife, and the lieutenant manages to get a hold of him with her sonic gun. At the outpost, Elizabeth thinks distributing the cold virus can offset the memory loss virus. She thinks of different scientific methods of sharing the cold virus, but Jim kisses her, transferring his virus to her. In the next scene, Commander Taylor wakes up on a bed, and Elizabeth asks him if he knows where he is. house. He looks around and decides he's in Terra Nova. Elizabeth tells him that she managed to create a vaccine and the rest of the team are now safe. Elsewhere in the woods, Boylan, the bartender, trades some medical supplies and power cells with Mira and the Sixers. It turns out he is the Sixers spy that Taylor and Jim are after. Boylan tells Mira about his deal with Josh. After realizing it's the cop's son, Mira is pleased since she can take this as an opportunity to get back to Taylor through Josh and Jim. In the following scene, Lieutenant Alicia leads a team to the woods after suspecting an intruder nearby. They find a little girl and take her to the medical sector. After her vitals are checked, she identifies herself as Lee, who has been living with the Sixers, and says that she was trying to find the portal as she wants to return to her grandma's in 2149. Jim tells her that the portal only works one way, meaning people can only come in, but cannot go out. The girl then tells the others that she lost her bag in the jungle. Thinking there could be something important in the bag, Taylor sends Lieutenant Alicia to look for the bag. Meanwhile, Jim and his family take Lee in to live in their house temporarily. While the lieutenant and her team are out looking for the little girl's pack, they are attacked by Sixers. Mira and her men hold them captive after a small fight. She then arrives at the gates of Terra Nova and meets with Taylor. Mira says she will let go of Taylor's people if he agrees to let Lee return to the Sixers. Taylor suggests that they let the little girl decide for herself instead, and Mira agrees. When Lee decides to stay at the colony, Mira reluctantly frees the lieutenant and her team. The following day, a couple reports to Jim and Taylor that someone broke into their house and exposed a now empty hidden compartment beneath the floor. When the lieutenant reveals that the house of the couple used to be Mira's, the security team immediately searches for Lee, who is now trying to run away from the colony with a strange box retrieved from the house. Thankfully, Jim finds Lee and takes her into custody. It turns out that it was all Mira's plot to retrieve the mysterious box. Lee reveals that she was following Mira's orders to obtain the box because Mira threatened to harm her brother Sam. Taylor and the team try to open the box, but to no avail. Next, Jim heads out to find the Sixers camp and rescue Sam, but instead steps into a booby trap. Sixers then arrive at the scene and take him to their camp. There, Mira reveals Sam was never in danger. She just had to lie to Lee to force her into doing whatever she asked of her. Mira also tells that someone in 2149 is indirectly controlling her actions since they have her daughter, Sienna, captive. They also want to overthrow Taylor. When Jim asks who they are, she doesn't reply. Instead, she suggests Jim join the Sixers because he is on the wrong side. She vaguely tells Jim that Terra Nova was not really established to give humanity a chance to start over. Mira then decides to let Jim go, along with Sam. Jim and Sam arrive back at the colony, and Lee is overjoyed to reunite with her brother. Later, Taylor asks Jim if Mira told him anything, but Jim denies it, unrevealing his conversation with Mira regarding her contact in 2149. One day, Foster, a member of the Terra Nova security team, approaches a communication outpost. When he opens the door, a Nicoraptor just inside the outpost attacks Foster, killing him instantly. Next, Jim and the security team arrive at the scene to investigate. While others assume that the death was accidental, Jim isn't so sure when he finds extensive scratches and claw marks on the inside of the station's door, indicating that the animal had been trapped inside. In the medical sector, Jim wants Elizabeth to conduct an autopsy on Foster's body, and strangely, she finds the blood of a Galisaur, a Nicoraptor's favorite prey, on him. Jim deduces that someone used Galisaur's meat as bait to lure the Nicoraptor into the outpost, so it would be there to kill Foster when he arrived. Meanwhile, Malcolm discovers an Ankylosaurus egg near the communications outpost. Upon seeing the egg, Zoe pleads with her mom to make it hatch, convinced that Foster was murdered. Jim and Lieutenant Alicia begin the investigation. They go to Boylan's bar, a usual hangout spot for Foster and his friends, to gather some information. At the bar, Mark informs them that Foster used to be in a secret relationship with a woman. He adds that Foster kept pictures of the woman on his tag, a digital card that includes all the information of the carrier. After going through Foster's bag, Jim and the lieutenant realize that the tag is missing. When they try to locate it, they discover that the tag is on the move. They realize that it is inside the Nicoraptor that killed Foster. Next, a team of Taylor, Lieutenant Alicia, and Jim tracks down the Nicoraptor and subdues it, successfully removing the tag from its stomach. After viewing the pictures contained on the tag, Jim and the lieutenant find that the woman is Rebecca Milner, a married woman. They question Rebecca at her house, but she initially denies having an affair with Foster. Her husband, Howard, however, reveals that Rebecca did indeed have an affair with Foster, and out of jealousy, he killed Foster himself. The following day, Taylor announces that he is banishing Howard for his murder. Howard is sent out of the colony with a gun, realizing that he easily confessed to murdering. Jim is still suspicious about whether he was telling the truth, or covering for his wife. Jim then tracks down Howard in the woods and tells him he does not believe that he killed Foster after all. Next, he sneaks Howard back into the colony so they can talk with Rebecca. To Howard's surprise, Rebecca states that she did not kill Foster either. In fact, they had broken up a few weeks ago because Foster liked to gamble excessively at Boylan's bar. While researching Foster's financial records, Jim finds that someone had owed Foster a lot of cash. Taylor orders his security team to arrest Boylan for hosting illegal gambling. Although he accepts the part about illegal gambling, he denies killing Foster. The security team searches through the bar for the financial records, but to no avail. Just then, Mark informs the team that Boylan has escaped into the jungle. Jim, Taylor, and another security member, Curran, head out to hunt down Boylan. After stopping at a spot, Taylor surprisingly starts questioning Curran on the killing of Foster, and then reveals that Boylan had not really escaped. He had actually told them that Curran had a large debt owed to Foster. Curran tries to defend himself, but when Taylor continues to press him, he pulls his rifle on Jim and Taylor and attempts to fire. Fortunately, Taylor had unloaded it before leaving the colony. The commander then wrestles with Curran for a while, cursing him for killing a fellow soldier. He then banishes Curran on the spot, and Curran heads off into the jungle to survive alone. Meanwhile, Josh and Sky follow Boylan's directions to meet with Mira regarding Josh's request. The pair meet the Sixers in the woods, where Mira tells Josh that she can help get his girlfriend Kara from 2149, under one condition. He must agree to follow her undefined task sometime in the future, when the time comes. Josh hesitatingly agrees, and Mira sends them back on their way to the colony. Back in the medical sector, the Ankylosaurus egg finally hatches. Zoe pleads with her parents to keep the baby, and they agree to keep it temporarily. Subscribe to see more videos like this, turn on the notifications, and hit a like to help the channel out.